So let's go through each of those kinds of energy to get a grip on what those mean. So like I said, the first and the bulk of the energy that comes out of the bomb is heat. And it's virtually instantaneous that it's produced from those fission reactions. And you'll reach temperatures of thousands of degrees at the hypocenter, at the location on the ground immediately below the detonation of the bomb. Basically the equivalent temperatures to the surface of the sun at first. That will result in an incredible amount of damage that is heat generated. Anything that is flammable within a few kilometers is going to go up in flames. It's going to have the capacity to melt material that normally you never run into melted. So ceramic tiles that are classic architectural pieces of Japanese houses, for instance, they actually started to boil. And you have to have a temperature of about 1800 degrees Celsius for at least 4 seconds exposed to a ceramic tile for it to boil and form these bubbles. And so you can see in this picture that any of the tile that was exposed to the heat rays, the heat blast basically, has gone to this bubbly texture, and that's evidence of the high temperatures that were reached. Anything that was meltable, bricks, ceramic, glass, metal, would often get fused together. So within a few kilometers of the center of the bomb's detonation, you can find evidence of teacups melted together, of glass bottles melted together. There are many cases where you can find a fusion of ceramics and glass and human bone in some cases. Anything organic, bodies, animals, humans that are located within about a kilometer or so of ground zero, were going to be vaporized in the process with no evidence left, not a trace of them left behind. There are many examples where people who went to Nagasaki or Hiroshima afterward could find evidence of where someone was sitting, for instance, and they're no longer there. And you could trace the outline, a shadow basically left behind from that vaporization process. And there's another picture that we can show you here of actual outline of a human and a ladder that he was presumably working with when he was also vaporized. If you go a little further away from the hypocenter, it's not hot enough to vaporize organic material. Instead, it's ignited, so it goes up in flames. And within upwards of 3 kilometers or even 4 kilometers, anything that was flammable and black would actually get ignited. So obviously anyone located near the center of the detonation was going to, and who was not vaporized, was charred beyond recognition. So bodies were unrecognizable. It was very difficult to identify which people had actually been killed in the bombing. And after the bombing, those who did survive were often burned. Upwards of 50% or more of their body's surface area was burned. And so it made it very hard to care for people, given that burns require such intensive treatment for people to survive. The second form of energy that's released from the bomb is blast energy. Blast is literally wind going several hundred miles an hour, so hurricane force winds. And that will tear buildings apart, it will tear objects apart, it will tear people and animals apart as well if they're located near the hypocenter. So upwards of 10 kilometers, sometimes even out a little further, glass was shattered significantly from that blast, so from the high pressure winds that were generated. Nagasaki had a focused version of the blast, which I'll explain in a second. It was amplified by the topography or the mountainous region around Nagasaki. And you'll be able to notice in pictures that the objects are shattered and pulverized to much smaller particles, much smaller pieces as a result of that focused blast. Another place where you can see the evidence of the power of the blast is a Torii Gate that's located relatively near the hypocenter. It's a concrete Torii Gate, so it was poured from molded concrete. And a Torii Gate has 2 parallel pieces to it at the top, and it's only half a Torii Gate left standing. And the half that is remaining standing has been canted, sort of forced away by the blast. So you have to imagine a blast being strong enough, coupled with heat to melt the concrete a little so it's ductile, so it could move a little, to actually force that Torii Gate out of alignment despite it being made out of concrete. And the other thing you can see along it as well is that all the engravings, the carving and the sides of the concrete have been melted away by the heat. So that Torii Gate by itself illustrates the effect of the blast, which knocked it out of alignment and knocked half of it down, and then the heat that melted away the surface that was facing the bomb.
One of the other things that happens because as a result of this blast is that all this shattered glass gets thrown out with the wind and then to some extent brought back by the winds. And so people were seriously affected by flying pieces of glass. It would get into people's eyes, into their face, cut tendons. It made some very critical injuries people had a hard time recovering from as a result of the flying glass. In many cases, it's killed them outright. And this is a photo of a concrete wall that has been peppered with flying pieces of glass, to just give you some sense of how much glass was flying through the air during the actual explosion. Many people died from objects getting thrown at them, of getting buried under collapsed buildings. All of that's related to the production of the blast energy that comes from the bomb.
Third form of energy that's produced by the bomb is radiation. And again, this is what distinguishes atomic weapons from conventional weapons, in addition to their magnitude, is the fact that it produces radiation.